Okay, this is a demonstration of how an interactive mock draft simulator works. And what we're going to do is explain the draft order a little bit. So today's date is September 16th. We've played 2 weeks of the regular season. I implemented a draft order for the teams that were 0-2, 1-1, and 2-0. And that draft order says Baltimore selects first, Cincinnati selects second, and Jacksonville selects third. Okay. And we can laugh because, the likelihood that that's going to happen is close to zero. I'm definitely not going to bet any money on it. But more specifically, what these three teams have in common is that the top of their draft board is going to be about the same. Okay. And here's what I mean by that. I've already done a test with Baltimore. So Mason Graham, I believe, is sitting at the top of their draft card. But let's look at Cincinnati and Jacksonville because I haven't done anything with them yet. So I'm going to go to Team Needs. And when you go to Team Needs on this website, it shows you the team player boards. Okay, so here's what I mean. So if we look at the Cincinnati player list, that is the player board for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I just want you to observe that Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and Cam Ward are sitting right at the top. Okay, so just want to point that out. And if we go back and we look at Jacksonville, Jacksonville should see something really similar. I think Ewers is higher because somebody has been probably playing with it, and they like Ewers more than Beck or Ward. Okay, but just observe. There's 4 quarterbacks sitting right at the top of the Jacksonville player board. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if we were to do a 2-round mock draft, and I'm going to pick for Kansas City, picking 32nd, okay? So 2-round mock for Kansas City, okay? But what we want to do is look at who the first 3 picks of the draft are, okay? And we, again, know this is never going to happen, but this is a great demonstration of how our simulator works. So if we look, we have Mason Graham, Carson Beck, and then McMillan went to Jacksonville. Okay. So I'm going to go through and just finish this draft for Kansas City. But what I want to do on this simulator is show how we can control the pick. Okay. So we'll go there. So we just did a 2-round mock there for Kansas City. Okay. Now, let's go to Cincinnati's draft board. Okay. So I'm going to do for Cincinnati this thing called the 2nd-round challenge. That's how the draft boards move. So this is going to be, we could do a 1st-round challenge. We'll stick with a 2nd-round challenge here, but a 1st-round challenge would also move the boards. So the 2nd-round challenge for Cincinnati will be 10 unique 2nd rounds. The 1st round, I could do whatever I wanted, and I'm going to do whatever I want and kind of talk through the player board. So Mason Graham goes first. The quarterbacks are sitting at the top of the Cincinnati player board. Okay, well, who would Cincinnati take if they were in this dream spot? So they would probably take Kelvin Banks. Okay, so Kelvin Banks is currently 7th on their player board. And then in round 2, I'll probably grab a corner real quick because I want to focus more on the 1st-round pick than the 2nd-round pick. Okay, so I just finished what we call iteration 1 of a 2nd-round challenge. So a 2nd-round challenge is 10 unique 2nd-round picks. I just did 1, and it's going to finish doing that first 2-round mock. It's giving me another 2-round mock. I want you to observe Banks was 7th. He is now 2nd. Because I picked him, he moved up. Okay, so I can do the same thing for Will Campbell. Campbell is currently 7th on the player board. So when I pick him, the next time he will be higher than 7. The players I pick move up. The players I don't pick move down. That's how this mock draft simulator works. Okay, so I have picked in the second round challenge, I've picked Davis and Ravel. Each second round pick will have to be unique. The first round, it will let me repeat. Okay, so you can see Campbell went from 7 all the way to 1. He is now sitting at the top of the Cincinnati player board. Well, what if they decided Luther Burden? Luther Burden is currently the 10th player on the Cincinnati player board. I let it finish. I have to pick a different player in round 2. Okay, so every time it goes to round 2, I have to pick a different player. That's what a second round challenge is. First round, I can do what I want. So I've already picked Campbell once. I've already picked Banks once. You see Burden move from 10 to 4. If I go with McMillan, McMillan will go from 10 to somewhere between 7 and 4. Okay, there's some math behind the scenes. I don't really talk about what the algorithm of the math is, just trying to explain how the simulator works. Okay, so in the second round challenge, we just finished iteration 4. So we went iteration 1, first round, second round, iteration 2, first round, second round, iteration 3, and so on. So there's going to be 10 iterations. Each iteration, I have to pick a player in round 1 and a different player in round 2. Okay. So I picked Mason Graham this time. He was 11th on the Cincinnati player board, and then he will be higher than 11th when we come in a minute. Okay. So I just picked an edge in round 2, and specifically, I picked Princely Umanalayan. Okay, so you can see McMillan, Campbell, Banks, Burden. They're all in the top 4. It was Beck, Ewers, and Ward originally. Okay, so I could also go, for example, if we look, Mason Graham has gone first. Nick Scorton is currently 25th on the player board. Okay, when I pick him, he will be higher than 25. Okay, so that was my pick in round 1. Now it's going to my pick in round 2. So what would Cincinnati do in round 2? Ty Felton in round 2. Okay, keeping in mind, it is September 16th. This is really early player board. So if you see me grabbing somebody in round 2 and it turns out he's a day 3 pick, we can laugh about this later. Okay, so we are in iteration 7. We can see here, iteration 7, we can see Travis Hunter, wide receiver, went first. You can see the players I have picked have moved up the board. So Mason Graham was 11th, or no, I picked Scorton last time. Scorton went from 27 to 20. So now I'm going to pick him again when he was 20th. It's going to move him up. And this is something, if you are picking somebody a little bit further down and you need them to move up, you may have to do this more than once. And when I mean this, you may have to pick Nick Scorton more than once. If Kenneth Grant falls to Cincinnati in round 2, you pick him. He's sitting at the top of the board. So I just finished my 7th of 10 2-round drafts. Okay. And Scorton that time went from 20 to 13. I'm now picking him when he's 13th. And that was iteration, I believe, 8. So this is the 8th of 10 2-round mock drafts. And we'll do Deion Walker in round 2. That makes sense. If he falls, I think that's a good value pick. Okay, so we just finished iteration 8. I have 2 more to go. So now Nick Scorton just went from 13th to 1st on the Cincinnati draft board. Okay, Mason Graham at one point was higher. Now he's 7th. So I'm picking Mason Graham again. Okay, so we'll go Trey Harris in round 2. The players I pick move up. The players I don't pick move down. We are finishing iteration 9 of 10. So we got here because we clicked second round challenge on the simulator earlier. Okay. And after you pick second round challenge, it's going to ask you to do 10 2-round drafts. So you can see Graham, who was about 7th last time, is now at the top. We are doing iteration 10. Luther Burden went 1st overall. So that time I'll pick James Pierce, and Pierce moves up. So each time you pick somebody, they're moving up. The draft boards are going to constantly change. Okay. And if Michael Williams drops to round 2, that would be a really good pick for Cincinnati, in my opinion. So that's why I picked that. So what you're going to see here is a screenshot at the end, and the picture may explain better what we just did as opposed to listening to my voice. Remember, a second round challenge is 10 unique 2-round drafts. So we picked Banks and Davis. Then we did Campbell and Ravel. We did Burden and Booker. We did McMillan and Sabanea. We did Graham and Humanilayan. We did Scorton and Felton. We did Scorton and Kenneth Grant. We did Scorton and Walker. If you remember, I had to pick Scorton 3 straight times to get him to go from 27th on the board to the top. So that's the boards are moving because of the player that I'm picking. Okay, so that's how the boards in the simulator move. We did Graham and Trey Harris. We did Pierce and Michael Williams. Okay, and we have the graphics here. And we can download them. So that's the button I was clicking right there, was to download them, or you can copy the image to paste it to Twitter. Okay. Okay, so now that we have those, let's go up to team needs. And there's a player board for the Bengals. So we go to Cincinnati Bengals, we go to their player list. Okay, you can see at the top, Graham, Pierce, Burden, Scorton, Banks. If you rewind earlier in the video, you saw that at the very beginning, it was like Ewers and Beck, or Beck and Ewers. I believe it was Beck, Ewers, Carson Ward, and Shadur Sanders. Okay, you can see that based upon all of the different players that I picked in whatever order, the order of the players in this list have changed. Why is that important? Well, if we come in and we do that Kansas City 2-round mock that we did at the very beginning, okay, and let's look at who got taken early in the draft. So if we look, first pick of the draft was Graham. The second pick of the draft was Pierce. Pierce got put there because I picked for Cincinnati, did a mock draft, the player changed. Okay, so we see Pierce. And because because of the second round challenge, I can change who other teams on this board will draft. So as fans from around the world use the simulator, the mock drafts will constantly change. I'm going to finish my Kansas City mock draft here. Okay. Every mock, so the mock I just did for Kansas City, Ursari's moving up and Yade Barron is moving up. Okay. The players I don't pick move down. So as I do a mock for Kansas City, those player boards move. As I do a different mock for Cincinnati, those player boards move. Every team on this simulator has their own player board. That's what an interactive simulator does. So every single time a user does a draft for Kansas City, what the other 31 teams are doing is changing for every user. Much more dynamic mock draft experience. My name is Jim Wickens. I'm with NFL Draft Fanatics. This podcast is the Mrs. R Relevant podcast, and we appreciate the sponsorship from NFLDraftFanatics.com. If you have any questions on how to use the interactive mock draft simulator, you can find me on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. There is no I in Fanatic. Thank you.